to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. Woo! What's going on over there, coffee boy? We three cups deep or what?
It's funny because I was just thinking about what was going on right before the show began. And so I think my mind was distracted. So maybe the welcome in, it just kept going. Because I'm looking at Deucer's Alley over here as we start the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
It was a fun morning.
Is that the word you'd use?
For us, yeah.
Well, look.
I think it brought great entertainment.
It's Thursday. It's February 20th. We're pre-recording this show a couple days early in light of the fact we are at the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association Conference in Vegas.
I am on an absolute heater right now.
Mike.
Oh, nice.
I just want people to know.
While you're listening, Mike is
I have hit at least 6 points in a row on the craps table. So
okay.
Hopefully you're there.
Oh, you're going craps.
He's got $36 of winnings in his pocket.
Well, I didn't say that
Mike doesn't go that hard.
I lost thousands before the heater.
Now, look, I mean, in Deucer's Alley right now, by the way, we have a mock draft, first-round mock draft 2025 we're going to do on today's episode, but you'll notice there's a very conspicuous absence.
No, not for the reason that it normally is.
No, this person is not using the restroom. In fact, they are not here because Al Borland, he was doing what he does. Always here, always available, always ready to go. Certainly 8 to 10 times more reliable than these guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Goodness, yes.
I'm just happy that
executive producer for
that
a
Papa
reason.
Josh over there hit record on all the microphones. Are you recording yourself today?
Yes.
Okay, because yesterday on the Footcast he didn't even record himself. But Al Borland was involved in a parking lot hit and run this morning.
Yeah,
he was hit. He was the one who got hit.
He was the one who went into an appointment.
Yeah.
Came out from said appointment, and the car was not the same as when he went in. No note.
Whoever this person was, they decided they would hit a Tesla because he drives a Model Y. They would hit a Tesla, which is totally rigged up with tons of active cameras at all times.
Yeah.
They would get out of their vehicle.
Yeah.
They would look at the damage done, which was significant, and then get in their truck and drive away.
And just so you know, when you back into a car, your license plate is that's the main show. That's the nose of the vehicle at that point. So it was so fun this morning to, it's like he's showing the video, and it's like, oh, okay, so we know exactly who this is.
License plate
left, and then Andy
A7. No, I'm just kidding.
And then the best part was Andy's like, genuinely, there is a chance because it had like a trailer hitch. There is a small percentage chance that the person maybe was unaware, despite the damage caused, that they backed into the vehicle. It just didn't feel it. It's a large truck. And then Jeremy proceeds to send a screenshot of later when the person gets out of the vehicle and looks at the damage and is like, yep, I did it.
Yeah. So pro tip for you criminals out there. Don't hit a car that's covered in cameras.
Yeah.
I mean,
and drive away.
And then don't get out and show your face on camera and then drive away. So
surprised they didn't go up and wave at the camera. Hey,
you'll never catch me.
I mean, I hit Jeremy's car once.
Yeah.
And I handled my business. It was a brand new car. It was Jeremy's brand new car.
You left him a nice note.
I left him a note. I said, I did it. Signed, Papa Josh. Welcome in,
Good
one and all.
grief.
Yeah,
Come on, people.
So Al Borland. Yeah,
we got to do better.
Let's be better.
We got to do better than that.
Oh, man. Not what we expected. So no Al Borland this morning, but the other guys got it on lockdown. Just no bathroom breaks back there, please. We got a good quick question of the day. We've got a first-round mock draft. Thought it'd be fun to just see where we have guys slotted in, in February.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. We'll do that. Not going to cover any news on today's show because, like I said, we're pre-recording it by a few days. So we'll just cover any news we missed next Tuesday.
I mean, there's just the one bit that we have right now is Clyde Edwards-Helaire did re-sign with the Saints. So it would, dynasty-wise, if you are rostering him, I would presume he will be the backup for Alvin Kamara.
It's funny
so
because
he's not totally valueless is what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is this is bad news if you're rostering Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
No.
Because now you have to keep rostering Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I do not believe you have to keep rostering him. But
I would look.
Alvin Kamara was over 1,400 all-purpose yards last year, despite turning 30 this year. He is going to be the focal point of the offense.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that in the slightest, but I'm saying in a dynasty league, you want as many backup running backs on that roster as you can possibly handle.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is Mike. You got to understand, Mike is the man who drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a dynasty. He had the shiny Ferrari. He has now got a weathered.
I got Jeremy's car.
He's got a weathered.
It's pretty beat up.
One wheel's left. It does move a little bit, and he's finding a reason to keep him on.
Yeah. Brooksy's with me.
The roster.
Brooks knows. You just stash as many backups, and then a week or two pops up. You're like, holy crap, I can't believe I have that guy on my roster, and I'm going to play him.
Okay. All right. Well, the Ultimate Draft Kit pre-order is available now. UltimateDraftKit.com. Get it by March 1st, and you'll be entered to win a Listener League spot. You'll get the lowest price on the UDK, UDK Plus, and some other perks and giveaways. You can check that out at UltimateDraftKit.com. Our quick question of the day. Did you hit Jeremy's? No. Tommy Reed.
We don't have to ask. We know.
Yeah, we know. And here's her picture.
We know who you are.
Are Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen worth second-round draft capital next season? That is the question. And while you ponder it, we have a little bit of research on the situation. We've had 21 quarterbacks drafted somewhere in the first 2 rounds since 2011. So high draft capital cost for quarterbacks, 21 times. Obviously, you're passing on other positions, right? We call the quarterback position a onesie spot along with the tight end unless you're in a super flex. You're playing one quarterback every week. You're playing 2 running backs at least. You're playing 2 wide receivers at least. So you really need them to pay off if you spend up. 11 of the 21, so 52% paid off on their average draft position. So you got a 50-50 shot historically over the last 14 years that they're worth it.
But lately, over the last 5 years, if you just look, because we've gotten better at fantasy football as a community, as an entity, 7 of the 8 quarterbacks drafted in the first and second rounds have been relative hits. So it's gotten better, but just kind of what you need, if you're spending a first-round pick, you need more than 24 fantasy points per game. You know, when you're looking at opportunity cost, if it's a second-round pick, you need more than 22.5 fantasy points per game as like the barometer for was it a good pick? And so that's when you're looking at Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, you go, do you expect them to have 22.5 fantasy points per game in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues? Yes or no?
Yes, I do. I expect that to happen for both of them. That doesn't mean I will pick them because
there's another side of the equation.
Yeah, the other side is what you're losing, right? If you are passing on a wide receiver in the second round and one that's more assured, one that's more consistent, one that provides, I don't know, called 17 fantasy points a game or 16 fantasy points a game, and then what I'm getting in return later on is 12 points a game, you know, and I have other quarterbacks that I'm fond of or think could enter that upper stratosphere and maybe only end up a couple points behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, I still wouldn't make that decision. There's an emotional piece that comes with knowing you have a starter slotted in every week.
Yeah. It is really nice when you have a top-end quarterback that hits. If you knew for sure that they are above that threshold, I am totally happy to take that pick. For me, that is a pro Josh Allen and a little bit of an anti-Lamar Jackson going into 2025 at that cost. If you look at the last few years, I mean, Josh Allen clears that benchmark of 22.5 fantasy points every year. Like for the last 6-7 years. It's just what he does over and over and over. Lamar Jackson was amazing this season, but that's not
number
what
one
he has
most
done.
Consistent.
Yes, number one most consistent. He threw for 41 passing touchdowns. Here is his passing touchdowns in the last 5 years. 41, amazing.
Nice.
24, 17, 16, 26. One of those things ain't like the others. And I'm not going to say that I expect him to throw 8.6% of his passes for touchdowns next year. That seems like an outlier. And if he doesn't do that, all of those seasons I just read, he was under the 22.5 fantasy points benchmark. So obviously we know he can do it. He just did it. I'm going to bet against it on the Lamar side.
It's not just that. It's you need the other quarterbacks to be bad. I mean, to keep and maintain your advantage. This is just, we're giving the numbers of they got to hit this threshold so they are worth the pick. Well, now you got to look at the field.
Mm-hmm.
Is the field there are years where the field is subpar and there's only the two guys at the very top, and if you have those quarterbacks, you have a big point advantage on a weekly basis. But like last year, Lamar was crazy with I'm looking at 6 point right now. Sorry to switch formats, but he's over 30. Burrow's at 27, Baker's at 26, Allen's at 25, and Jaden's at 24, Goff is at 23. The discrepancy between Lamar and Goff is huge, but there's a handful of guys who are keeping you competitive, and then the opportunity cost of the other players, the wide receivers, the running backs, the higher probability of the second-round pick hitting. It's second round is too much for me. If you want to get into a third-round discussion, I can see it. I
think we're going to always end up here on this show because there's also – look,
it's because it's supply-demand. This is market.
And the last 14 years, you've got a 50-50 shot of them delivering anyways. And maybe some of the good fortune in recent history has just been, if an injury happens, right? Where do you need depth more if an injury happens? At positions that you have to start multiples?
Correct.
Or at the onesie positions. I mean, I also think it's easier to identify later round quarterbacks personally that I think, could deliver
it is
higher end totals like a Jaden Daniels who was called out early. You could have drafted Derrick Henry in the second round instead of Josh Allen last year and then gone and got a Jaden Daniels or a Joe Burrow later on.
Yeah, or pounced on Baker off of the waiver wire.
Right. If you want to compare the onesie position, you want to lock down one of your onesie positions. It seems pretty clear that just like, you go Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, maybe Jaden Daniels, they're going to be great. Well, at the tight end position, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers are going to be great. Maybe you want to throw George Kittle in there, maybe not, but that's kind of it. Now you look at round 8, 9, 10. Yeah, you've got rookies coming in that run like Jaden Daniels and all those guys that were – what late round tight end is going to become elite? I'm not saying yeah, exactly. You're grabbing your
unless one of the rookie tight ends.
Sure, but
hits.
even Brock wasn't a 9th, 10th round pick this last year.
I think he was tight end 8 or 9.
So
he was around
6th, 7th round.
Then to answer the question succinctly, no.
Yeah, not a second.
Yeah, I say no.
I agree.
Okay.
All right, so we'll jump right into it. We're going to do
We could have answered that real quick.
Yeah, but we didn't.
We
didn't. We just didn't.
This is the data. This is why.
Going to illustrate the point, remind people why we wait on quarterbacks unless we're unless we want a year off of that stress. You just want to
that is true. Some leagues I don't care about. I'll be real honest.
Oh, do you draft early
100% I draft early quarterbacks and early tight ends in leagues I don't care about because I don't if I'm in one of those less maintenance, I'm I don't want to scour the waiver wire. But if I care about the league, if I'm this, I'm this is my passion. This is who I am. The league of record. I'm not playing the lazy man game.
No, and that's not to say you won't be tempted when you're in the middle of the draft and you see that name there and you're like, oh, I could. Sometimes it's harder to draft a, I don't know what the name might be. Maybe it's Brian Thomas or maybe even go down. Maybe you say Bucky Irving, right? But then you got Josh Allen, the MVP, sitting there. That can be a tough decision
for sure.
To go away from the star.
I was going to bring that up. So right before coming into the studio, I mentioned to Mike, I was like, man, maybe we should have done a 2-round mock because when I was coming up with my list of the players we're drafting in the first round, there were a lot of players that felt like kind of that first round bubble that were the Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors and Drake London, and does A.J. Brown sneak in? There's these second rounders, the Bowers and Trey McBride and all these
spoilers.
Names. Well, those, I mean, I doubt they're in the first, but my point was going back to, do you take that opportunity cost at the quarterback? There are so many good players in the second this year.
Well, let's jump right in.
The Fantasy Footballers Mock Draft.
All right, a little early bird first round 2025 mock draft. Jason, I guess you won the prize. You got the first pick.
Woohoo!
So what are we doing here?
That was a real Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. You happy about that?
Self-evaluating.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty happy with that. He does some great work.
Who's in consideration at number
Doughboy?
1?
Yeah, the Doughboy does great does great work.
Is that the pick? I think that was the pick.
So in consideration is between two players to me. It's just a matter of, do I want a wide receiver or do I want a running back? Because both of these players were exceptional this last year and project to be more of the same next year, which is Jamar Chase and Saquon Barkley. That's my number 1 wide receiver, my number 1 running back. It's very difficult for people to repeat exactly what they did last year, but if I look at the variables around it, we don't know if T. Higgins is going to be on this team. He might leave. Saquon is older. Jamar Chase is in his prime. And when you talk about the difference that they made, Saquon was great, but Jamar Chase lapped the field. Second place in half PPR leagues, the second best wide receiver was like 4.5 points per game worse. This was... Yeah, to me, if I've got the first pick, it's Jamar Chase, and when I say I was considering, I wasn't really considering. It would be between those two people, but it was easy. It was like immediately it was Jamar Chase.
Yeah, that's the right pick, I think.
Because you can make an argument Saquon shouldn't even be the first running back.
Yeah, he won't be.
Oh, okay, There you go. So, but how could you make the argument like for someone else over Jamar Chase after what he just did?
Yeah, if the season that he had lapping the field, like if we can pretend for a moment that it was Jefferson that put those numbers up and Chase put the Jefferson numbers up, I think you have an argument at that point to say, hey, you like Joe Burrow more. He could be the MVP. He could throw for 45 touchdowns, and Chase just kind of had a down year, and Chase could surpass him. Like if those roles were reversed, but in this situation, because of Joe Burrow's performance last year, which was MVP caliber, and because of a change at quarterback
expecting a rookie
in Minnesota, because of a lot of mouths to feed with an Amon-Ra, because of quarterback problems for Neighbors, like there isn't really, CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, he could do it again, but you're going to have a return for Dak Prescott and success on the offense. So I think Chase would have been my pick at 1. But I will go with Bijan Robinson at pick number 2.
Ooh, I like it.
Wow.
I will go with Bijan. This was a very special year for Saquon Barkley, and while his variables haven't changed tremendously, and I don't want to discount his season in any way, it was just a very special 2,000-yard season with a ton of dependency on big, long touchdown runs. It's hard to repeat those at the volume that Saquon did. I think what we saw from Bijan in the second half, his youth, Michael Penix taking over, I'm going to slightly go with Bijan Robinson here. He led all running backs in percentage of carries that went 5+ yards. He's kind of did it quietly. But
the beginning of the season wasn't all roses for him.
Yeah, I mean, Saquon is coming off a tremendous season that, maybe a lot of people will just reward that with the number 1 overall pick, which I think is fine. But he does have an injury history. He is older, which increases the odds of those injuries. I love that the offensive line and the team is going to be the same. So I think it's splitting hairs there as opposed to Chase.
That part's good. You can also make the argument, he's not – I mean, he can be a prolific pass catcher, but that's not what this system is.
No.
And he wasn't, even though he was the number 1 running back. It was on the basis of total yardage and touchdowns. And we just saw, he almost broke the record. He almost broke he probably could have broken the all-time rushing record. Last year, the season before, there was a wide receiver that almost broke the receiving yards record, but he was a little older. And then he played 17 games this year and got about half of that in Tyreek Hill. So
it's trying to forecast, the variability there. Only 2 running backs since 2007 had 17-plus fantasy points in 10 of their final 11 games. It was McCaffrey in the fantasy-breaking season in 2019, and it was this past year's Bijan Robinson. So I'm looking at it from that last 10, 11 games and what we're projecting into the future. So I slightly lean Bijan Robinson, and we'll take him with the number 2 pick.
Cool. I'll take Saquon Barkley.
That
it's interesting that Bijan is the preferred, because the argument to me is not Bijan at number 1. It's Jahmyr Gibbs or Saquon Barkley. That's how I lean, and I'm looking at things. Yeah, the long touchdowns are hard to repeat, but if anybody's going to repeat them, it's Saquon Barkley, who frequently has his longest carry of the season is 40 plus, where Bijan is just what was Bijan's longest? Let me
we looked at
37 and 38 as a rookie, that's still great. I mean, home runs at the running back position are not frequent. We can get too wrapped up in, this guy he's only getting 25 is his longest run. If you're getting 15-yard carries all the time, then that's fine. I don't care if you're not getting 50-yard runs. But Saquon Barkley, I'm still confident despite him being 28 years old.
I get it. I get the discussion around Gibbs as well, and we'll move on to pick number.
Most yards before contact since 2016, which
that's a heck of a performance by the offensive line.
It's like, look at last year with DeAndre Swift. I mean,
yeah,
they were doing the same stuff, but Swift is not.
He looked like a good player for a second.
Eagles
he got a lot of money because the Eagles O-line.
The Eagles really aren't fair. Like, I was just gonna say, hey, Cardinals, as a Cardinal fan,
right?
Build the trenches. You know what I mean? Like, their offensive and defensive line.
It is boring on draft day.
But then I was like, wait, but they've got the best defensive line maybe in the league, and they've got maybe the best offensive line in the league, and it's like, okay, that's boring.
A top quarterback, top wide receiver.
They've got 2 stud wide receivers, a great quarterback. It's like, wait,
they rebuilt their entire cornerback, secondary in 1 year.
I think they won the Super Bowl.
I think you're right. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Jamar Chase at 1, Bijan at 2, Saquon at 3. Jason is now on the clock in our early 2025 first-round mock draft, talking through some of these names.
Yeah, I'm in an interesting spot, very similar to the first time I picked when I was deciding between Jamar Chase and Saquon Barkley, a wide receiver or a running back. My number 2 wide receiver is available. My number 2 running back is available. I have Gibbs at number 2 as well. However,
is your number 1 Bark? Oh, you said that.
Yeah. It goes and Bijan's my third.
I didn't know you both hated Bijan.
I don't just think he's number 3.
Absolutely love
bronze medal Bijan Robinson.
Just love 3 backs. Not on the same team. Please only use 1 running back on a team. Offensive coordinators for fantasy football purposes. Anyways,
and yet you both have Gibbs ahead of Bijan.
He's
that sentence is why I have him at 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. Mike's, reason for the lack of explosive plays, Bijan having 36 yards as his longest run. When someone breaks fantasy, it's the season, CJ2K. It's the season where it's just like they can have 4 or 5 60-yard rushing or receiving touchdowns. That's what Jamar Chase just did. That's what Saquon Barkley just did. Jahmyr Gibbs can do that. I don't know that Bijan has it. He doesn't have that pull-away long speed that sticks. He's, constantly breaking tackles. But I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb here.
Oh.
CeeDee Lamb is my number 2 wide receiver. This last year, in the first 17 weeks of the season, because he didn't play in Week 18, and Week 18 doesn't matter, he was the wide receiver 5. And he didn't have a quarterback, and he didn't have a shoulder. That's coming off of being the number 1 wide receiver two seasons ago. And going into next year healthy with Dak there, we can mock Schottenheimer, but it's continuity it's the offensive coordinator that was just running things where CeeDee Lamb is as good a wide receiver as anyone in the National Football League. He is an alpha for the team. His target market share is great. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys, with Dak Prescott, are a top 10 offense easily. So the scoring opportunities go up. We already know he can be the wide receiver 1. So I've got him as – I mean, I just don't want to forget about him because of what a really lost season it was for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact he was the wide receiver 1 2 years ago is pretty compelling.
Kyle just gave us some pretty interesting information for the 3 running backs because we're talking about length of run. So percentage of carries that went for 5 or more yards. Barkley was at 39%, Bijan's at 44%, and Jahmyr Gibbs is at 41%. So that's what we were talking about, where Bijan is consistently getting the smaller chunks, which, like, those add up. Then 10-plus yards, the percentage of carries that have done that. Barkley was at 13%, Gibbs at 17%, which is wild, and Bijan's down at 11%. And then the big boy carries, the 15 or more rushing yards per touch. Barkley was at 7%, Gibbs at 10%, Bijan down at 4%.
You guys know I love Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when I look at Bijan and Gibbs, and if you take the 3 games away where he played by himself without Montgomery, and you look at the fantasy points per game between Bijan and Gibbs, Bijan is at 18.3, Gibbs is at 17.6.
Yeah.
So they're neck and neck. I don't want my guy to ever come off the field. I know I'll get 50 more carries from Bijan than I will Jahmyr Gibbs, and I will be slightly less stressed when I see a quarter where I don't see my player. Yeah. So that split the difference. Now,
I get it.
You went CeeDee Lamb. I had him at 6 on my rankings.
Overall or at wide receiver?
Overall.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm going to go with it's between Jefferson and Gibbs. I'm going to go Justin Jefferson at 4. Tried and true, reliable, consistent. I'm gonna take the shot on Jefferson, knowing exactly what I'm gonna get. It will be a risk. It was a risk last year. Sam Darnold was supposed to be the sacrificial baby. Didn't really matter to Justin Jefferson. He was still excellent.
Became the prodigal son.
Yeah, and now we're gonna have a new quarterback, most likely in Mr. McCarthy. So I'll go Jefferson at 5.
Cool. I'll take Jahmyr Gibbs.
Mike's just getting the leftovers.
So I mean, these are fun exercises, because the weight of the first round pick is massive. Yet, if you're a seasoned fantasy football player, you know you don't win in the first round, not very often, but you certainly can set your team way back if you whiff on the first rounder. So being where we are, of getting Gibbs at 6, looking at these like top 6 players, that's nice. And then people ask us, where do you want to pick? Where do you want to pick in the first round? And the answer is generally figure out who the elite players are, and then towards the back of that is where I like to be, because then I just get a slightly better second-round player. And so far we got 6 players who I love.
This is my line.
These 6?
Yes.
And now it changes? Okay.
Yes.
The tier breaks?
Now it changes for the way I have it ranked. Maybe not in Jason's book. He's at pick 7.
Yeah, my line is coming up, but I've got a player that's still inside of it. It's actually my 5th overall player, and my wide receiver 3 is still on the board. Puka Nacua is that dude. He missed the first – a significant portion of the season.
He is my 3rd wide receiver right now, too.
And that really hurts him in overall rankings, and is obviously where he finished on the season. And
so Jefferson or Lamb, who's behind him?
For me?
No, for Mike.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I missed CD. Puka's at 4.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
I have Jefferson behind Puka. So for me, Jefferson's by 4. That's not anti-Jefferson. It's pro-Puka. Puka Nacua, he missed the beginning of the season, but if you look at when he came back and started playing his normal snaps, which was week 10, when he started getting up, over 70% of the snaps. 8 games played, half the season. He was averaging 18.1 fantasy points per game, which would have been the second best wide receiver. Jamar Chase was up at 20, but on a points per game.
What span was this?
Week 10 on. Once he was at his normal snap percentage.
Gotcha.
As soon as he was playing healthy games the rest of the season, he was 18.1. This last year, Justin Jefferson was 16.1. And Jamar Chase was at 20. So that's how good Puka was. Now obviously things could change. We don't know even if Matthew Stafford will be there. This is assuming Stafford is there, and we know Cooper Kupp's not going to be there. So he's going to be the underdog fantasy guys refer to Matthew Stafford as a kingmaker, which I love, because if you look back, the unbelievable seasons from Calvin Johnson, obviously he was a king in and of himself, but then the unbelievable fantasy breaking seasons for Cooper Kupp, that was Stafford. And now, and you even had Kenny Galladay seasons where it was like he got that man paid because he is willing to say, I'm going to go to this guy most of the time. And if that guy can stay healthy, which is obviously a question mark for Puka, he's going to be so outlandishly good for fantasy football. Puka already has been, so I love Puka.
What if it's Darnold?
If it's Darnold, I'll definitely move him down.
Okay.
I would take Justin Jefferson over, ironically, since that was his quarterback last year. But, yeah, this is under the assumption that he has Matthew Stafford.
Pick 8, give me Malik Neighbors. I'm going to take Malik Neighbors at pick 8. He's going to be a high percentage chance to lead the league in targets.
Yeah.
He is of the Chase mold and ability. Explosive plays, big plays, touchdowns, target volume. I'm going to kind of suppress some of the externals, knowing that those are going to be variables in play right now, and much like the Stafford situation for Puka, I think Malik Neighbors, if he was a top 2 wide receiver next year, that's not going to shock to me.
Ironically, and I mean, he is just off-season rumor nonsense, but one of the destinations for Stafford is like maybe he'll find his way to the New York Giants, and if he did,
oh my gosh,
Malik Neighbors it'd be like, well, it would probably go for me. It would probably go Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, then CeeDee Lamb. There's
a lot of discussion around just the fact that general manager and head coach in New York, it's like you got to win now. Like this is where like the best thing for the organization is probably to draft a quarterback and mold that quarterback and create your future, but you don't get that opportunity when you were on the hot seat sometimes to wait. And they've had two or three waiting years in a row. So if they went out and found a veteran, if Aaron Rodgers went to New York, if it's Matthew Stafford, if it's Sam Darnold, if it's any sort of competency. I mean, I told you the 3 games with Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors as a brand new baby in the NFL was on pace for 255 targets. That's not a real
I wonder why he got hurt.
And 1,800 yards and 17 touchdowns. Like that is like if you just swapped him for Jamar Chase on the Cincinnati Bengals, he's going to put up Chase numbers. There's not a skill set problem there. It's just a peripheral problem, and I'm going to trust the talent.
I kept watching those Giants games, and while they were fun to watch Malik Neighbors get those targets, I don't know how many times out loud I said, "You're going to get him killed. You're going to murder this man. He cannot take that many hits across the field." So yeah, hopefully there's a little bit more efficiency and the target volume stays there. But I agree with you. If you flipped him and Jamar Chase, he'd put up similar numbers to Chase.
Chase, Bijan, Saquon, CD, Jefferson, Gibbs, Puka, and Malik Neighbors at 8. I think that we're getting into a category where there's a lot more debate around these picks.
Mm-hmm.
Mike is at 9. Who you got?
And in spite of me giving the warning of in the first round, you can really hurt your team. If I'm in this range as of right now with the news that I have as of this recording, I would take Christian McCaffrey. I would be willing to do it. I would take on the risk of – and what's wild about McCaffrey is last year when we finally got to see him after the double Achilles tendonitis coming out of the bye week, you were like, that dude, that is not good. That is not good, Christian McCaffrey. And yet the first game back against the Tampa Bay Bucks put up nearly 14 fantasy points and a half scoring format. nearly 13 the next week, has the really bad game against Green Bay, and then at Buffalo, in a quarter of the game, had 7.7 points in 25% of the snaps, and is one shoestring tackle away from a breakaway touchdown that instead turned into his season-ending injury. He will be the focal point of the San Francisco 49ers. You don't have Debo taking away carries from Debo, the short area stuff from Debo. I think that those targets go right to Christian McCaffrey. So it's a massive risk because the burns from last year are third degree that some people may never, ever recover from, and I don't blame you. But at this point of the first, I'm a running back that could finish overall number 1. I'm going to go with it. Not just finish number 1, but lap the field at number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. He's done it before. He's done it off of injuries before. He's obviously older. You have the kind of older season ACL injury from Adrian Peterson where if you've got that outlier human being where he comes back and he's amazing and you're like, wow, I didn't know when you're older and you have an ACL you could be fine.
CMC is 28. He's the same age as Saquon Barkley, and we're sitting here probably talking about Derrick Henry in the first round, so who's 31. So there is I
have Derrick Henry ahead of Christian McCaffrey in my rankings. When I was putting this together, CMC
is that who you're taking here?
No.
Okay.
I have a different running back ahead of I've got 2 more running backs ahead of Derrick Henry personally. Who I'm taking here is Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is still under contract. I'm not doubting I'm not letting any narrative get in other than he is their true workhorse back. He'll catch a ton of passes. He'll get the touchdowns. He's integral to the offense. This is 2 years in a row where he has been a top fantasy option. And so thankfully this is not a mock where we're drafting teams because I would not love to have Puka and Kyren on the same team necessarily as a roster construction, but he belongs here to me. I see Kyren Williams as a first-round fantasy.
That's what I mean. That is, 4 points fewer than Henry per game, so that would be a projection of Henry declining.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of the age, the system, the Cinderella offensive output from the Ravens, and Derrick Henry. I don't want to get caught holding the bag. I don't think it's going to. But if there is a young stud running back like Kyren still available, I'm gonna take him ahead.
You want me to blow your mind here, Jay?
Please.
Kyren Williams currently in early best ball drafts is going at the back of the 3rd round as the running back 14 behind James Cook.
I
would not do that.
To start playing some best ball leagues and draft Kyren everywhere. I mean,
just overexposed.
That's amazing.
He's much more Bijan than he is Gibbs and Saquon,
yes.
right? His long run on the season, I'm seeing 30. One time.
That's not his skill
27
set.
once. So from I'm just saying from a best ball perspective, I get it. Your performances are not
the
as
spike weeks.
Like you need him to score inside the red zone, which he does at regularity. He was also 5 points per game worse last year than he was the year before, right? When we got the 12 elite games from Kyren.
He was like Christian McCaffrey levels. That
he was 19.9 down to 15.9. Yeah. I'm just laying out the different storylines there from a best ball perspective.
He's had over 30 touchdowns the last 2 years, and his snap percentage I think is secure. So
I'll take Amon-Ra at pick 11 in the first round after your Kyren selection, getting towards the end of the round. I'll take the try. It's between him, Henry, Brian Thomas, and Nico, and I'll just take the guy I know on an offense I know. So I will go with Amon-Ra.
I think there's an argument here. Like when I was putting Amon-Ra in my rankings, he would have been my pick as well. There's an argument that he should be, I mean, I was at the point where it's like CD or Amon-Ra, Puka or Amon-Ra. He is as good as anyone at wide receiver. None of us
have said Brock Bowers' name.
Yeah, I have Bowers in the second.
Yeah, I do too.
You can make an argument for a lot of these players.
Like
here.
Bowers versus Amon-Ra at the back of the first round. Who gives you the better advantage on your team? I could see an argument. Mike, finish us up here. We got Chase, Bijan, Saquon. CD, Jefferson, Gibbs, Puka, Neighbors, McCaffrey, Kyron, Amon-Ra, and
I know you've got the pressure.
I gave you like a lot of time there to just say, to just say the name.
It's between two players for me. My highest, just because of how fantasy football works, it's gross. But I would take Achane over Derrick Henry, despite hating, or not hating is too strong of a word, but just being frustrated with what was going on the field for the Dolphins. And Achane, it felt like he didn't deserve all those points, but that's how the scoring of fantasy football works. So you got to lean into it. And then the wide receiver, it's my bro love for Nico Collins is unending. It started so hot, but it didn't finish very well. I think there are reasons for the fall off of Nico and the Houston Texans over the second half of the season overall. I would go, if I'm on the clock here for reals.
You are.
I'm going to go Achane here.
Okay.
I'll go Achane because there's still a few, like, I know that, well, I guess it's 12, so I get another pick. But, like, with Nico, Brian Thomas, London, like, there's still some really elite wide receivers here, and running back is, not that they aren't great running backs here, they're just a different tier.
Makes sense. So there you go. There's your top 12, very, very early first-round mock draft. You can feel free to tell us how we were.
Mock the mock.
To mock the mock. Yeah, I like that. We'll take a break, and we'll jump into some mailbag. All right, it's time to answer some Foot Clan questions.
Mailbag.
Oh, yeah. If you got a question for the show, you can go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, click that Submit a Question button. You can also dial our voicemail hotline, 302-464-TFFB. We'll start with a voicemail.
This is Adam. I'm just curious, what do you guys got happening with Brandon Aiyuk? Whether it's the return in first month of the season or what? What's our take on that?
I think it's going to be one of the bigger questions for the offseason. Here's what can't be forgotten about Brandon Aiyuk. He was awful.
Yeah, the beginning of last year.
Before he got hurt. Like it'd be easy to be like, oh, man, once Brandon Aiyuk gets back, he will be an elite fantasy option. This is a player who was the wide receiver 14 in 2023 with an efficiency that was out of this world. He had 17.9 yards per catch, which helped him put up 1,300-plus yards on just 75 catches. Last year, if you were playing Brandon Aiyuk, he was one of the worst picks in fantasy football. Wide receiver 66, 41, 47, 57. Finally got up and got a wide receiver 10 week and dropped back down to 58 the next week. So
and these aren't just poor wide receiver rankings. He's like
28 yards.
He's
43
maybe
yards.
hitting 7 points if you're lucky.
Played 7 games. How many touchdowns did he have?
Was it 0?
0.
Oh.
Yeah.
0 touchdowns.
When you're not scoring 7 points a week, you're not catching touchdowns.
No, so I mean, you have a season where he was on pace for like 900 yards.
Yeah, and if you have access to the Ultimate Draft Kit, you can look at our injury tracker there that breaks down all the existing injuries. If you're like, how serious was it? How was it not?
How many ligaments do we got?
This was the ACL, the MCL, plus meniscus damage, which slows recovery timeline. So he could be available week 1, but he's going to be limited throughout the offseason, could start on the PUP, will not be full strength. Personally, when I look at all my rankings, whether it's Dynasty Startup or Redraft, and I compare that for consensus, I'm very low on Brandon. Like I don't want Brandon Aiyuk. This year, I just don't want to play the game, and maybe it turns into, Chris Godwin this last year was amazing, and sometimes it bucks the trend, but I'm kind of just
Godwin
he was a couple years
yes.
removed from his injury. I'm just saying it still felt this past year like it was he was an injury worry because it didn't look like he had ever recovered, but I'm not going to be playing the Brandon Aiyuk sweepstakes.
Yeah, but you were just doing one.
Yeah, it was just one. So is that not a sweepstake?
No, it's still a sweepstakes.
Really?
Yeah, one sweepstakes is a sweepstakes.
Yeah.
That feels
You're either winning or you're cleaning your house.
So you have one sweepstakes?
Yeah, you have one not the way you said it, but
yes.
yes.
I mean, that's the only way you can say it.
If you join a sweepstakes, you're not joining multiple. And there's always there's a sweepstakes, and you could win the big check.
So there's no singular sweepstake.
No, there's not.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, I feel like we've really faded on sweepstakes in general. Like that's not a big thing anymore.
Yeah.
With the
big check,
with Publisher Clearinghouse.
Yeah,
the big check's not going around.
Here's what I'll say about Brandon Aiyuk as well. The opportunity will be there. Deebo Samuel will be gone, right? George Kittle a year older. Aiyuk got paid. If he was healthy quicker, he should have the opportunity. But we had the who've you fallen in love with, right? Your preseason crush on the Tuesday episode. Ricky Pearsall's in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really think, look, this offseason, I doubt he gets shot.
Yeah, I'm going to put the odds low.
So, to me, Ricky Pearsall has an opportunity to start the year.
Yeah.
Our AI overlords are telling me that while sweepstakes is often used as a singular noun, technically the singular form is
I
sweepstake.
don't care about technically.
So, like, I entered the sweepstake?
Yeah.
No.
That sounds bad.
That's not just because it exists. You said it. People use sweepstakes.
Yeah, I didn't say it wrong though. I'm just saying.
I'm gonna go with. I still think you said it wrong.
Okay, you hear that, AI?
You're probably
Andy Holloway
was
disagreeing with you.
I bet you're a cactuses guy.
Get out of here. I'm from Arizona.
You seem like a cactuses dude.
Because cacti
you seem like
is
that.
dumb. You know what else is dumb? Deer and fish. Deers. It's fine. Put an S on there.
You're saying because that's not right? A bunch of deer, right?
Yes.
But you can't say a bunch of deers.
Yeah, well, you can't
Deers?
because grammatically it is incorrect.
Right.
But it should be correct.
Look at all those gooses. That's dumb. But it shouldn't be dumb.
No, it should not. Why did we have to do that?
So if you ever win a big check, I want you to come out and be like, I won this in a sweepstake.
Yeah.
I bought a single geese.
We had a great thing going in our language. They're like, hey, there's more of them. Slap an S on there. It's all we needed to do.
We got to, I mean, what
That's
is
all
it?
we needed.
Like Bargatze in the skit, he's talking about, look,
Yes.
if cow is beef, right? Pig is pork, and chicken is chicken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, what are we doing?
And then talk about a hamburger.
Go all the way or none of the
Beef.
way?
All right, Instagram question from Connor James. Breece Hall or Chase Brown next year? This one's for Jason.
Oh, why are you doing this to me?
You won the sweepstake to answer this question.
Oh, fantastic. I'm going to – my Lanta. As of this moment, not knowing how these teams end up going, Zach Moss is under contract. He will be healthy. I don't think Chase Brown retains his entire workload, even though he was amazing. I hope he does. I think he can handle it. But it doesn't matter what we think. It's a matter of what happens from the team. I'm going to lean on the Breece Hall side.
Oh, give me Chase Brown.
Chase Brown.
Yeah.
Assuming they don't draft a running back.
Correct.
I think there is a much higher chance of the Cincinnati Bengals investing in the running back position compared to the Jets. But status quo, it would be Chase Brown.
All right. What do we do with Rico Dowdle ahead of the NFL draft? Corey wants to know. Probably more of a dynasty question. Yeah.
Move him if you can.
But you
can't.
Like who is trading anything?
I'll give you nothing for him.
Yeah, like you guys would, in the midst of Rico Dowdle's 1,000-yard rushing season, you guys would not have traded for Rico Dowdle. And now that he is staring down, like we have no idea what's going to happen with his career.
The best case for Rico is returning to Dallas and being part of a committee with a rookie.
Yes.
I mean, right now
a lower-tiered rookie.
Right now, Rico Dowdle is an unrestricted free agent. I think the amount of guff the Cowboys got this last season over not addressing their running game.
Or is Jerry the Moon Man, the guy who's like, screw you guys.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, don't tell me how to GM.
It's one of the best running back classes, top to bottom, that we've had in a long time.
There's so many opportunities for them to address it. So I don't know that Rico has any job next year.
Well, I mean, like
for any team.
I think I have Cam Scatterbo at like 9 right now. If Cam Scatterbo went to Dallas, he erases my interest in Nico. So the 9th best running back off the board would erase my interest in
Rico.
Rico.
The
Rico Collins, as I say.
Rico is just like Clyde. It's just like that he should. I think he'll get a backup job. I disagree with that. Rico won't have a job.
I think he'll get a backup job. I'm just saying
not a starter.
He won't have any job that can be fantasy relevant in the league for any team. That's my projection for him. He will be a backup, so maybe an injury.
He could be this offseason Zach Moss.
Yeah, I mean, maybe an injury in the season.
Okay,
next
what if
year.
he went to Cincinnati to compliment Chase Brown and literally was the Zach Moss of the offseason? Is he fantasy relevant?
He is a high value insurance running back.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I think he will be.
Yeah, in Dynasty you're not going to cut those guys.
No.
You can't cut that guy.
No.
But it's just not going to be someone you start either.
One last question here from Connor. What quarterback will be the best value in 2025? I'm looking at the early best ball ADP on Underdog, which is, you're looking for kind of the big performances there. Who do you have, like, after our initial question to start the show? Is there a name that is it Dak because he's coming back from injury late on a good offense that you like? Is it Herbert, whom they may add a quarterback? Is it Jordan Love or a wide receiver? Is it Jordan Love because you think they'll add a wide receiver?
To me, the two targets would be Jordan Love and Dak. It was a disappointing season for Jordan Love, but the way that the pendulum swung, 2 years ago, it was running backs did not score for the Green Bay Packers. Then this past year, especially over the second half, it was Josh Jacobs gets all the touchdowns. I think that will regress to the mean and maybe even skew a little bit towards the pass just because of the way that offense runs. But so between him and Dak, I think you got some good late-round targets. Laser.
That scared the tarnation out of me.
It
really did.
Laser's my pick.
He's QB 8 now.
Yeah, I think that's right in that zone where I'd love to have Baker as the highest up. Jason, are you scared?
I'm just holding back getting the zone, laser zone. I held it back.
No, you didn't.
That was Burrow.
No, I did hold it back. You called me out.
Holding it back would have been not thinking it at all.
Okay. I'll have to suppress thoughts.
What are your guys' quick thoughts here on Patrick Mahomes being still the quarterback 6?
It's fine.
I love it. I love to see it.
You get Rashee Rice back. You got Xavier Worthy.
I'm not going to draft him there.
That's more what I mean.
Yeah, but right behind him is Bo Nix. Are you taking Bo Nix over Mahomes?
I would take Bo Nix over
I'm not
Mahomes.
doing that. No.
My target would actually be...
Patrick Mahomes gets to come back with a chip on his shoulder and the opportunity to have some wide receivers healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Mahomes is the #1 quarterback this year. It's good for the NFL. I want him to remember that he can throw the ball down the field. That would be amazing because they play so many games on national television, and we want fun football. But my target for fantasy football is Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert started the season doing very little for fantasy football. The first 7 weeks of the season, he was averaging 16 fantasy points per game. The last 11, he was up to 20 fantasy points per game. So I expect them to add another weapon to this offense, probably both in the receiving and the running game. It's a good franchise. It's a quarterback we know is good. He's going late in drafts. He actually started running a little bit more this year. So I think he's, depending on where he is drafted after they add weapons to the team, that'll be interesting to me.
All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Fantasy Footballers. Please click that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. Click that button. Leave us a review. We'd appreciate it. We're going to get into coaching changes, our 10 Things to Remember episode, and more next week.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.